Hi, everybody. I'm Candid the Stanisci, and you're watching Candid Very Live's Leave Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and also all Smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Leap Talk, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Okay, thanks for doing the show. We'll see you later. It was fun. Okay, so, well, I keep saying they make it easy. They make it easy to criticize the officiating. On the second goal, there were three penalties that weren't called. Not one, but three. There was a slew foot. There was a slew foot, a can opener, and a hook. A trip, actually.
It's what we call the uncalled trifecta.
Wow. Let me fix the camera. When you see stuff like that, you ask yourself, is it because I'm a suck? Is it because I, you know, I'm overly critical? Is it I have my expectations are way too high? I don't know. I don't know if it's my imagination on that second goal, whether I saw what I saw. So I recorded it, made a copy of it, and I actually, we should play. I made a copy of it, but I never posted it because I thought, it looks, you know, it looks like whining, but I don't know, Aaron. Um, it, it I don't know. It seems almost obvious, and at this point, they have their favorite referee refereeing tonight, going for the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah, it's one of those really interesting situations that we're facing here, and they've got Wes McCauley tonight, so it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Um, I do appreciate Keith explaining that yes, Wes had been nothing but a professional in dealing with him. I can't help but feel that there is a certain amount of side eye that went along with that. But yeah, it's one of those situations where it's you have to make the best of it.
I don't know how you make the best out of a situation where there's three fouls on one play in 15 seconds. In 15 seconds. I don't know how you make the best of that. And I don't know. It just, I have no respect for the refereeing in the National Hockey League. I always suffered from a lack of respect for the league in the first place. Some of the stuff that they do is, it always had going back early before your time, it had almost a criminal edge the way it behaved. There were moments where people in charge were going to jail and things like that in the National Hockey League. So they have a reputation of not being very straight or straightforward. They had an owner in the Maple Leafs owner, Harold Ballard, that they thought it was okay to have a guy who was sent to jail. There was no moral standard that was required to be an owner of the National Hockey League. So when people like me say silly things like this, like I'm saying today, they may think I'm crazy or biased or all that stuff, but in actuality, it's just a historical thing that the National Hockey League has been like, and it's too bad. It really is too bad because a lot of people have to suffer who shouldn't have to suffer. And again, I repeat, I'm a Toronto fan, not a Leaf fan, and I just don't think Toronto sports fans should have to put up with that kind of officiating. It's a little ridiculous.
And it's something that we're going to have to repeat and repeat and repeat until we're absolutely blue in the face.
It won't change. It
No,
won't
it's
change.
not going to change a single thing.
It won't change until something happens at the top. This goes to this is the man that runs the league allows this to happen. And the morality of the National Hockey League is obviously in question because you can't have a guy who has a reason to have a bias officiating game. It, I know he has a job. I know you don't want to take his work away from him, but you also, if you care about appearances, then you do something about it. If you don't do something about it, you either don't care about the victims or you just don't care. So, that's but the National League has proved over the years that, moral standards are questionable to begin with. It takes them a long time to figure out what they're doing is wrong, and it just takes forever. And I point at Hockey Night in Canada as an enabler to allow that kind of stuff to happen. On that goal, they did not mention a single thing about any of the fouls that happened on that play, as if they didn't happen, as if nobody could see them. They had them in blue. They they painted them. They painted them and just went, I don't see nothing. I don't see nothing. And if that organization, if Hockey Night in Canada was a pro Maple Leaf organization, like people try to insinuate, what a golden opportunity for them to take advantage and use their Leaf bias. It would have been a perfect moment for them to do it. He tripped him, he hooked him, he openered him to. So listen, what the Leafs have to do, I said it from the beginning, is they have to overcome poor officiating, and it's the only way they're going to win. They're going to have to play that much better than the opposition, because they're not going to get a fair shake.
Now
And
there is one thing I noticed about everything that's going on, and that is that if Florida knows that they're going to be getting a penalty, they will try to draw a third or a second at least, in the hopes of getting a Maple Leaf to respond. Because if they've already drawn one penalty on one player, it's unlikely that that player is going to draw a second penalty on the same play. Right? So if I'm already getting booked for tripping and something happens in front of the net, I may as well punch that dude next to me in the face, because they're not going to get me for roughing as well. If anything, they're going to give him roughing once he punches back. But I already
and
know I'm going off for tripping, so I'm going to try to
absolutely.
disturb as much as I possibly can.
And then there is the bunting cross check that didn't happen. That
Oh no,
was
they got that.
fined. No, that was fined. A fine.
Yeah.
And the same guy takes down Matthew Nyes and ends his series.
Yep.
And
He
he gets fined.
well, as
He gets
far as the Department of
fined.
Player Safety is concerned, justice has been served. The player in question, while he may not have received a penalty for putting a headlock on and throwing down Matthew Nyes, thus concussing him, didn't receive a penalty on the play. He has been punished monetarily to the tune of $5,000 for another infraction, which also was not called right in front of the referee. Now, this isn't Bennett's first rodeo. He's done this sort of thing before. He was called on exactly the same sort of thing 2 years ago. Um, and it was a cross check to the back of a Nashville Predator. Uh, and again, not called at the time, $5,000 fine. This is a history and a repeat offender. Now, he's not within the mandated 11-month period to require additional follow up and supplementary discipline, but he's still done it before. Frustrating.
All I can say is that if his name was Spezza, he'd get a 7-game suspension.
Oh, probably. But, you know.
A 7-game suspension Spezza got for less than that.
Didn't he appeal and get it knocked down to 6?
To 3.
3, right.
No, was it 6? No, I think
It was 6
3.
games initially, yeah.
Okay, 6 down to 3.
Still, you know.
But it goes to show that's an admission of excessive punishment, because they had to go down to 3. When we look at I've said this over and over again. If you're a Boston Bruin, you've got a right to do anything. You can get away with anything.
Yeah.
We've seen so many fines to them. We've seen warnings, things we've never seen, where a player does something that deserves a suspension. Not only were they not fined, they were warned. And they sent out a press release saying, "Well, this person doesn't have that kind of reputation."
Brad, you got to stop licking and kissing people. It's just not fair.
Doesn't have that kind of reputation. That now is a defense.
Hey, you know what though?
How about Spezza? What reputation did he have?
Oh, he's a Maple
0.
Leaf. Hey, he's a Maple Leaf. That's all you.
Really... That's the look. If you're a Leaf fan and you're upset about the officiating, here's what you need to do. And this is my suggestion. Steve Dangle went berserk after that game. I don't know.
He
I don't
did.
know if you heard. This guy's an emotional. He's an emotional person who loves his Leafs, whether you believe it to be an act or real. He does it well. He's very convincing that he really cares about the Maple Leafs. I heard this is the second person, so you can correct me if you heard about it. He went berserk with somebody who was um, what was it? Something to do with Florida, not the game, not just the game, but something to do with Florida. Anyway, he went berserk. The only thing I can suggest, and I did this about 10 years ago. The last time I just threw my hands in the air and said, you know what? There's no point to doing this. I can't watch this league. It's disgusting. It's just biased to a clear degree. I stopped watching for 3 4 years. I stopped watching. I refused to support the that entity. And if Leaf fans really are unhappy about what happened, you don't do anything stupid. You just vote with your eyes. You just say, you know what? I don't need this crap. I'm moving on. I'm going to go do something else. I'll go watch the Tiddlywinks National Championships or the series at Tiddlywinks or some other sport that you give it a shot to see if it gives you the satisfaction of being able to watch and not feel cheated and not feel like abused and not feel harassed and not feel like you're garbage and this league is just using you, which the National Hockey League does with the Toronto Maple Leaf fans. It's abusing them in this case. Last year the Leafs were eliminated against Tampa. There were two penalties on the play that turned out to being the winning goal. They canceled a goal by the Maple Leafs on the exact same kind of play, but they didn't call it against Tampa. They called it against Toronto, taking a goal away. So when people say, well, the penalties add up, well, maybe those penalties that the Leafs got at the end of the season to eliminate them from the playoffs were made up in the exhibition season.
I have to laugh though every time I see Paul Maurice complaining about the number of penalties that his Panthers take. But they are playing legitimately straight up Paul Maurice clutch and grab, slow them down any way you can.
Slashes to the
Hockey.
hands.
Oh God, yeah.
Slashes to the hands, which are automatic penalties. At least they were before this series. You weren't
No,
allowed to slash players on the hands.
yeah, and it's
That rule's
something that
gone
they do that on a regular basis, and they can't understand why they're getting called for it. It's like,
because they know they have the free reign to do such things. Let's talk a little bit about the game and how the game can improve. We know that the officials, like in gambling parlance, uh, Florida has 2 goals. So they get about 2 goals in the game from the officials. So how did the Leafs score more, 3 or more goals than Florida to win the hockey game? I repeat what I've said all along, and that is they have to ignore the idiocy that the National Hockey League calls officiating, and they have to play through that stuff. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. You've got a kid in his first year playing in the National Hockey League who now isn't going to play anymore, and you've seen what happens, and you were on the bench. Look at all those Leafs that were on the bench when Spezza got the 7-game suspension. So they know what they're in for. They have to give it their best and hope to heck uh, that their play is so much better than Florida they can actually win. Because if they can win the next game, which is going to be played in a few minutes, if they can win that game, right? Um, what a person can hope, what I hope, is that this year, Hockey Night in Canada talks about the officiating the Leafs are contending with during the series, not 3 series later. They talk about it. Let's see if Hockey Night in Canada has the balls to tell the truth. And then Leafs, you go ahead and you do the best you can. But you know what? It's a business, right? They all get paid. It's not like they're ducking their pay. It'd be different if they were ducking, Matthews. We agreed to an $11 million contract, but you know what? We're gonna scale that down to a $6 million contract. Okay, we've decided to do that because rules don't matter. So they've got to play through that stuff. I'm really incensed by it. I watched it over and over again, and every time I think of that young lad, his first year in the playoffs, being such a great influence on a game, and he's he's taken out of the game in what was clearly not a hockey play, which was clearly an attempt to injure, which was clearly visible, and a fine was, so the Leafs are going to have to go through this. I'm going to go on for an hour like this because I just can't. Everywhere I turn, I think about, it's sad. It's sad, to see a young man like that who proved he belonged in the National Hockey League being taken out with a non-hockey play that's not punished. It's terrible. So they're gonna have to play through that stuff, Aaron. And I don't think Samsonov was the problem. We saw the 2 goals that he let in. At least 2 of the goals he let in weren't his fault. So the
No,
goaltending's fine.
as far as I'm concerned, yeah, the goaltending has been acceptable. There have been a couple that you want back, and I
No,
think that
there was one. There was one where he
or
slid
two.
over the puck.
Well, there were one or two. I'm thinking back to the first game. There was
Are we
that
talking? Are we going back to the beginning of the season here?
going back to the beginning of the series against the Florida Panthers when he allowed a breakaway
Okay.
goal. That was
I'm being
that no, that
sarcastic.
shouldn't have
I'm
happened.
saying if you can't let the guy have a bad goal, um, you
Well, we
know,
can, but the problem is we're now down to 0-2 in the series. So
I
I'd
know, but
love to give him that, but at the same time, I kind of don't
he's got
want
to
to
have
give
a
him
great
that.
game tonight. The Leafs
Yeah.
have to have a great game. We have to see, it's that same problem I said last time, and I've said all season. What have I said has been the biggest problem with the Leafs? It's their ability to execute the final play. By final play, I mean the final move. They get into a position where a goal should be a 90-10 advantage, right? And somehow they turn that 10 into the factor. They had, aside, unbelievably, they could have won that game if they had found the net, but all they found was iron, um, and over the net, and have all that, and great goaltending. But great goaltending has something to do about the shooters too. They have a say in how good a goaltender is.
Oh, they most definitely do. The problem is Samsonov so far these playoffs has been an 895. So
Yeah.
that is a bit of a problem. Joseph Wall hasn't been much better in the one game that he appeared in. He allowed 1 goal on 5 shots, so he's at an 800. So that's even more precarious. But again, small sample size kicks into effect here. The problem that we have here is the Maple Leafs got themselves a nice lead in the second game against Florida, and they immediately pulled in all their arms and legs and tried to stay safely inside the vehicle until the ride was done. And when you're in the playoffs, that sort of approach isn't going to work. You do have to still keep pressing, and if they can't take that lesson into tonight's game, which starts in another 35 minutes, then they're well and truly sunk.
And what we saw happen to Nyes can't happen. They've reverted back to their old self before, in the playoffs, before the past couple of years, where a Leaf player is attacked, nobody backs him up.
Well, and here's the thing. Now that the media are trying to turn Sam Bennett into public enemy number one, and the Department of Player Safety has effectively anointed him a supervillain by the fact that he can get away with evil and not be punished. I don't want the Maple Leafs to try to take it out on him physically
No, 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 no. The moment
because,
something happens, it's the moment something happens
yeah.
that you cannot have a long memory. We fans can have long memories because, there are moments in our lives where we go, "Where were you when Doug Gilmour was high sticked, bloodletted, and lost a series?" That's how our lives are measured, right? Where were you when the Leafs won the Stanley Cup? Well, you were a blink, or what is it, a gleam in your father's eye. I was actually watching. I was actually watching that game. So yeah, so the players have to have a short memory, unfortunately, and that's why I said at the beginning of the year they need somebody to vet for them with the officials. They have to have the Leafs. I don't know why they lack the ability to protect the players, because so they can't do anything. The players have to do the best they can at that moment. So when Nyes was wrestled to the ground, and I don't mean to say this with total sincerity, but I'm just saying, in hockey parlance, they should have driven Bennett's head into the glass. That's what
Oh
they
yeah.
should have done. And I don't mean that literally. I mean it figuratively. They should have made him feel some pain and should have taken a 2-minute penalty for what what happened there, and get a fine, because you can do a lot and get only a $5,000 fine,
Oh, there's so much that you
right?
can do and only
And
get a
it's that
fine, you know?
moment they should have done something. That's when a player should have done something. When you look around and you go, okay, they can do that to me, and there's nobody on this bench who's gonna take my side or help me out. It's not good.
No.
That's another thing they got to fix. The goaltending we talked about has to be a tad better. The defense, um, as a group, can we say that they're bad? No, no, no. But we can say that, unfortunately for the Maple Leafs, when Austin Matthews, right, Mitch Marner, and the captain don't contribute, the team will struggle and may not get the result it needs.
Now, the one of the options that we do actually have available is to go with 11 forwards and 7 defense. They've done it before, and it seems to
Oh,
have worked. You can
they lost
slot
a
in,
forward. That's simple math.
well, you can slot in Gustafson. You can slot in Connor
It worked
Timmins.
last time.
Yep. There are options that are available to them. It's now a question of them making sure that they take advantage of that. Sure, they've got a 2-0 deficit heading into sunrise, but
Yeah, but
it's
one
one of
game at a
those.
time. One
Yeah,
game at a time. Listen, as frustrated as we both are with the officiating, I think we talk about the officiating. Yeah, as
yeah.
frustrated as we are about the officiating, the 7 defensemen, I think it'll work like it did last time, because the physical play of the forwards of the opposition, in this case Florida, last time Tampa, they can sustain the kind of physical altercations with the opposition and spread it out among 7 players as opposed to 6, because trying to hit a player or being hit, there's a dispute and people argue the issue. Does it take more energy to lay the hit, or does it take more energy to receive the hit? I ask you.
Having both received and given many, many hits in my time as a player, it is more energy consuming and taxing to be the one taking the hit as opposed to the one giving the hit.
So
So
by math, spread that out among 7 as opposed to 6, because that's essentially what they do. They wear the defense down. And when you're a Sam Bennett and you can do what you want, you can wrestle a guy and bang a guy's head against the ice. That leaves you to a lot of options in, undermining a defenseman's freedom to operate. So that they're going to have to take that stuff, and that's what they're going to have to do. I think you're right. I think they might go with 11-7. If they don't go with 11-7, last time when they were in a desperate way, they switched to the 11-7. They wanted to change things up. Remember, against Tampa? Well, they did. They won the game, and it was a key game that they won. Right? They put them on the precipice of winning the series. So I think they're going to have to do that again. And I believe their power play, their puck possession at the beginning of the game was really good. They've got to find a way to make that puck possession game work longer in the game.
making puck possession work longer in the game, also B, getting valid and good scoring opportunities off of those puck possessions is key. I know a lot of people have been keying on the fact that Nylander hasn't exactly been scoring at a record-breaking pace so far this series, and that's true. But if you look at the number of successful zone entries that he's had as part of the offense, that puts some of the pressure on his line mates to try to finish it off, because he had, I think, 5 or 6 separate zone entries in the second period alone in their last game that were successful, that somehow didn't end up scoring chances because the other forwards on his line couldn't put the puck towards the net.
As a group, well, I'll start with as individuals. The Florida Panthers have done a great job of eliminating time and space for the Maple Leafs. They're a team that need that. They need time and they need space to make their whoopity doo passes and beautiful goals, right? They really do got to get away from that. They've got to go back to what helped them beat Tampa. They went into the dirty areas, made the simple plays, and converted them for goals. Remember, this is the team that scored all 3 of their goals on tip-ins to take over, to put themselves in a good position in one of their first games in Florida. In that case, it was Tampa. In this case, it's Miami. And that's what they have to do, Aaron. They're going to have to simplify their game. They've got to. We saw a couple of plays in that game where it was like, I'll shoot at the net, but well, look at Nylander. He was alone against the goaltender with the puck on his stick. It was about what 8-10 feet away. Who do I pass to?
Yeah, yeah, and we were commenting on that when watching the game on Thursday as well. It's you got to shoot the puck. You can't keep looking around for
The
somebody
guy's
else
got a
to
great
hand it to
shot.
you. You got to shoot. And it was the same with Mitch Marner too. We're just looking at him, just screaming at the TV, "Shoot! You got a shot. Use it, please, for the love of God. I don't have enough hair to pull."
Neither do I. It's thinning out. Um, you know, they can be entertaining tonight. They can recover. They can spit in the eye of the demon, the officials and the National Hockey League, and they're on their own here. And I hope Keefe in that locker room tells them before they go up, hey, look, guys, they don't want us to win. What kind of win could this be? Let's go out there and make it hard for them to cheat us of this next win. We want our fifth win. We want to put that fifth puck in that wall. We want to put that in there. We're going to do whatever we can to get to that. We're going to ignore what's going on. And we're going to play like it matters, because as much as it seems like they play like it matters, like on some power plays and some entries into the zone and some opportunities they've had to, go on offense, they have to be a little more committed on defense. That winning goal was a terrible goal to give up, across the whole defensive unit, in the heart of that defensive unit to the opposite side of the net, where poor Samsonov had to make that lateral move, and he just didn't make it on time to that side of the net.
And again, it's finishing it off. It's making sure that you seal the deal. It's using what works in the past. Like, keep doing it.
And because I'm not done with suggestions for the Leafs.
Oh, keep going, by all means.
I think Matthews also. I think Matthews has to stop thinking about where he's going to put the puck. You know that? I think he has to try not thinking about where he's going to put it, because I get a sense for the amount of time the puck's on his stick, and believe me when I say this, I'm respecting the guy's ability to shoot the puck quickly. He only has it on there for a fat split second. He needs that fat split second to lose some weight.
Yeah, no, it's release speed is super important when it comes to this sort of
And
thing.
that's lose weight. That's a double entendre, by the way.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You'd like the fat second to be thinner, but at the same time, you'd like the puck to be heavier. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a tricky combination.
And the puck needs to be a little more fearful and in pain. It really needs, the Leafs have to be mean, not just to Florida. They got to be mean to that puck. They got to shoot it with just not. I'm not saying devil may care, because that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is they should revert to their natural innate ability that they work on at practice, and they've worked on since they were 4 or 5-year-olds. You know what I mean? Like they're not letting their natural ability come out. This is the thing about the Nylander and Marner thing that we just talked about. They weren't doing what they learned how to do. First opportunity you get, shoot it at the net. First opportunity you get, try to beat the goalie. Don't worry about looking pretty. Like, this is one of the issues that the Leafs have had over the years, is they've really worked very hard at going after the pretty play, instead of the ordinary, easy, successful play.
They've been looking for the tic-tac-toe highlight reel top corner goalie
Forget
flashing
that
the leather
crap.
missing play. No, put your head down, muscle it in. That's all you got to do. Put your head down, muscle it in.
Just let the puck do the work. They've got the part figured out where skates don't move as fast as the puck, right? They've got that figured out. They understand that. But the puck also moves quickly towards the net. You don't have to carry it to the net. We saw those 3 tip-in goals. The puck's in the air going, oh, I'm safe. I'm safe. What the heck just happened? Give that little puck a little slap in the ass. towards the net, and the puck goes ouchie, ouchie into the goal. That's what the Leafs have to do. You know, have some fun out there, Leafs. You know, the stress that the fans are feeling, unfortunately, is the stress that the Leaf players cannot and should not and dare not feel. And they're
I,
feeling it.
and that was one of the things that one of my coaches always told me is you can never skate as fast as the puck. Never.
And you know, that's another reason why you got Marner and I'm sorry, it sounds like we're picking on Marner and Nylander. That's more proof that the sticks are getting squeezed a little too hard. When you're in front of the goaltender and there's nobody around you and the thought to shoot doesn't enter your mind, the sticks are getting squeezed a little hard, buddy. Stop squeezing the stick.
You got to wonder how much sandpaper they're actually making, or sawdust they're actually making out there
Oh
the way they're
my
rubbing those
goodness,
sticks.
my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, I looked at Nylander's stick on the bench when he had it up above his hands, and I could see his finger marks on it. He had that he squeezed that sucker really good. Yeah, no, they've got to relax a little more. It's hard to do. If you listen to the conversation we had, you know, at the beginning, for those of you that just joined us, you missed a rant about the officiating, a truthful rant, a fair rant, but a rant nonetheless. Um, you will understand that for us, as much as it bothers us, you know, when you're O'Reilly and you skate down the ice and beat two defensemen to the dot and they don't give it to you, and the two defensemen are holding you as you're trying to get there, that's interference, and you don't get the call because you know the rules suggest that if a defenseman doesn't make a play for the puck, it's icing. So they weren't making a play for the puck. They were making a play for the. I'm back at the officiating again. God darn it!
Funny how that happens, Frank.
But that's just it. They've got to play through that crap. They got to play through that crap. And you know, if you know, being called a whiner is one thing, but there's also, you know, I don't think I'm a whiner. I think I'm a liberator. With any situation, with any situation where there are people who are being abused, and I don't, it irritates me to see that. You know, it just irritates me to see that. They've got to work hard. I think somebody should do a book one day. You know, Aaron, to stay on topic, the officiating topic. Somebody should do a book with and interview former Leafs who weren't Leafs. There's about, right now in this very generation, there's probably about 8, 10 players that have come to the Maple Leafs, played as a Maple Leaf for a short time, and then gone back to being somebody else. And do a book on, tell me something. If I told you I felt the Leafs get bad officiating, would you have any reason to believe that to be true? And it'd be interesting to hear from those players who like how does O'Reilly feel watching what's going on here, watching a line mate and knowing that they're, you know, these players, eventually the word's going to get out. But you know what, Aaron, it's not going to get out to help Leaf fans today. Uh, it may help Leaf fans tomorrow. You know, to hear somebody say what they saw was real, it's hard when you're seeing something and it's being ignored and you know it's true and you believe it's true and you're seeing it with your own eyes repeatedly. You know, it's not just a one shot deal. You see it repeatedly. I'd love to see something like that. Toronto, you deserve better. I'm here to apologize to you, not on behalf of the National Hockey, not on behalf of the officials. I'm apologizing to you as a person who's watching your suffering and believes you don't deserve it and believes the only thing you probably can do about it is to walk away and say, I'm not supporting this anymore. And it's the only thing that Leaf fans have left. It's all they have left because they can't expect a fair shake. And here's the thing: if they run away and stop watching the playoffs, let's say the Leafs get eliminated. Hopefully not. The Leafs get eliminated, and all Toronto hockey fans, people who love Toronto, feel that this league isn't worth watching. If they don't watch it, Sportsnet loses a lot of money. Here's why: if you do that, they lose a lot of money because what they get paid, what they make in advertising next year is based on how many people care right now. If you understand what I'm saying, the way advertising work goes, or finances go, what have you done for me lately? And if all of a sudden the fans turn on the National Hockey League, selling advertisers can say, "Are you kidding? You don't have the same kind of numbers watching." A lot of people are very unhappy with the league, and they're very unhappy with the Maple Leafs, and they're hurt and frustrated, and they don't look like they're supporting. We can get what you want from us for a lot less, and that's the only way. Throwing jerseys on the ice was a way to do it back in the day. That's when things turned around, Aaron. That's what happened. Isn't that what happened? Isn't that what it went back to? If you remember,
Yeah,
Shanahan came here because they were losing. They were having people not buy tickets. There were empty seats.
yeah, for the first time in a long time, there were
We're
a
headed.
lot of
We're headed
vacant
there
seats.
again. That's
Yeah,
where we're
oh,
going.
there is no doubt in my mind. And it happened in Montreal, and it happened in Vancouver, and it's happened in other arenas around the league. In Chicago, it happened. People refused to show up because the team was crap or the product was
Or they've had
borderline
enough.
unwatchable.
Or
Exactly,
they've
because
had
it was
enough.
borderline unwatchable, and the league had to clean up their act. And I mean that hiatus lasts just long enough for people to commit to new season tickets once they see an improvement, and then once that happens, everything starts to backslide again. And it seems to be a 6 or 7 year cyclical sort of thing, and we're coming up on that sixth or seventh year right now. So,
Well,
you know,
it,
like
it,
the
it
Argonauts winning every fifth year in the Grey Cup, it's one of those things.
well, it's proven the test of time.
True.
There is. Is this a situation that I'm promoting? Because I don't want to speak for you, Aaron, because you deserve better. Is this a situation? I guess by my definition, is it? Well, if I really believe and if what I've seen is wrong, how can I support it? That's my logic. It's just that simple. If I really think there's something wrong, and my neighbors, my friends, uh, my fellow Toronto hockey fans, the ones that are Leaf fans, the ones that aren't are very supportive of what's going on here because they get to dump on Leaf fans, which I find childish and stupid. But that's who they are. Um, Leaf fans, you deserve better than this, and it's not the players' fault. I'm going to say that too. It's not the players' fault, and I feel sorry for Kyle Dubas. But more than him, I feel sorry for the water bottle that took the heat.
Now, he didn't throw that water bottle. He recycled it in a very expeditious manner.
Yeah, there was still water in it, though, Aaron. It was a little early for that. It wasn't dead yet.
It was
It
premature
weren't a dead
expeditious
soldier yet.
recycling.
It weren't a dead soldier yet. And like this guy's Mr. Cool. He's Mr. Politically Correct. He does the right things. Tavares in the series against Montreal is lying on the ice, and he panicked and ran down the stairs. He's a very emotional young man. He's done a great job with the Maple Leafs. He has made massive mistakes, simple mistakes, basic mistakes, and Leaf fans have paid for them, and that's why there's talk that he won't be rehired. It's not because he isn't a better general manager today. He's a better general manager today than he was when he first, came onto the scene with the Maple Leafs. And I'm not talking about when he was less than a GM. I'm talking when he became the GM.
Back in
You know, um,
2019, that
he's a
long
much
ago
better
yesteryear.
he's a much better general manager. And when and if the Leafs decide that he needs to take his leave, he's going to leave here a general manager, and he'll have had the opportunity to see what not to do as a general manager, and never go back to the idea that in the playoffs physicality is irrelevant. He'll never go back to that idea again. And the good news for him as well is, as it has been for the Maple Leafs over the decades, when he leaves Toronto, he doesn't have to carry the burden of putting up with the kind of treatment that Toronto Maple Leaf teams get. So his success will increase. He will look a lot better because he won't be a GM in Toronto. The players that are here that move on, I don't know about that. I don't know what happens when the new GM comes in, if there's a new GM. All this talk that I'm having right now really does circle around 60 minutes today.
It
It can be
really,
put on
really
a
does.
pause. It can be put on a pause with a victory. And then there may be a little more time to think about it, because if they could win this one, then it's not as bad as it was, and if they could get past in this series, this is a team that um, hopefully will have learned something from that last game, the last couple of games, that they have to not worry. about the noise. In Toronto, the noise has always been about the fans. I believe the noise now for them is the officiating, and it's been the noise for a while. We're going back to he's back again tonight, the same official.
Yeah,
That's
and again, in a league with 35 different officials and over 18,000 possible refereeing combinations, they seem to go back to the same individuals an awful lot for these sort of things. Uh, and this referee with the deplorable excess of personality gets treated like a superstar by the NHL. But I would like to point out they were actually going to have an AMA session with Wes McCauley and canceled it within 15 minutes of posting it because of the amount of questions they got that they did not feel he would be adequately prepared to answer. So, there's that. There is no actual officiating school for NHL referees, if you can believe it. There's no courses they have to take. There's no programs. There's no anything like that. It's, hey, I saw you coming up and doing refereeing during high school. You look decent then. You seem to kind of know the rules and can keep your calm under pressure. And you haven't punched a player in 4 or 5 years. So why don't you come up to the NHL with us? There is no standard. In the same way that there is no real standard to be a hockey coach. There's no coaching schools that you need to go to. There's no vetting program. There's no anything like that. It's just, hey, you want to coach? We saw what you did with a high school team loaded with talent. Why don't you come here and coach an expansion franchise? It's the
Well, that's
same thing
part
with
of it.
general
That's the
managers.
education, though, Aaron.
There's
That's
the
the
same
education, though.
and there's the same 32 general managers that keep rotating around this league. Where is the new blood? Do you see what
It's
I
it's
mean?
coming. It's
Oh
coming.
God, I really hope so, and I hope it doesn't
But
come
it
at the
only
expense
comes
of
at a ten
Altuve.
percent rate. It doesn't come. It doesn't come quickly.
I just
It's difficult. It's difficult for teams to shy away from experience. The whole reason why Florida has the coach they have is because they wanted a coach with experience, and he has a lot of experience, going back to being the youngest coach in the National Hockey League
not
and a
to
former
mention his
Maple Leaf
ability to
coach.
curse at the referees in Toronto and his ability to curse at the referees in Winnipeg, and now his ability to curse at the referees in Florida. So yeah,
Well,
Paul Maurice is doing a bang up job so far. He's been
you
how
know,
many times has he had a different coaching gig?
Paul Maurice is a smart man. He's a smart man. He's a very smart man, and you know, he saw what was happening in Winnipeg. We all saw what was going on in Winnipeg, that they'd fallen from grace. We saw that they were a team that um, did at one point look to be um, doing well, but then they lost a couple of key players and two defensemen, one in New York right now, one retired. Um, and it just so happens those two defensemen they lost, key defensemen, captain of the New York Rangers, were of one type of defenseman. And we've seen the hits that emanate from the C on the New York Rangers defenseman. Some were suggesting it should have been suspendable, but it wasn't. It wasn't deemed a headshot or leading with the head, I guess, being the first point of contact or the point of contact. This is what Winnipeg lost. This is why the coach of Florida left. He didn't have the kind of team he needs to have. He came to Florida. Florida was a team that played beyond the rules. That's how they won. They won the President's Trophy. They're a very physical team. And then they got rid of one of their best players who wasn't very physical, sent him to Calgary, and picked up another physical player. So, Aaron, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the officiating, the head coach of the Florida Panthers needs to complain about he can go to that move, because if you play a dirty kind of hockey game, if you play, hack and slash, right? If you play that kind of game, you're set up to complain about the officiating. I mean, what do like, I don't understand. They're calling us for all our trips. I don't understand. They're not letting all our punches go. Why are they calling us on, holy mackerel? Of course he didn't give him a penalty on the takedown. You don't expect them to call penalties against us every time, do you?
And again, it's one of those things where we've seen it all before, we've heard it all before, and we'll continue to hear it all before. And quite frankly, I am almost at my wits' end with this league. And I keep saying hockey's a great sport. The NHL can be a good league when they finally finish messing around with it.
Now,
And, you know,
I might have been inferring that some of the Leaf players were being a little cowardly because they weren't standing up for Knies. I won't the word I don't want you to hear and I don't want you to think, folks, is cowardly. But what I am going to say that you're proving that you're not someone that can be counted on as a teammate when you don't stand up for that kid. Remember, we're talking about a kid and nobody did anything. I just find that, I don't know. Is he a rotten person? I mean, is he a guy that most of the players don't like on that team? Is he one of those players that's doing really well on the ice and we see him playing well, but he's a jerk when nobody's looking or the players don't like him? Well, to the Maple Leaf players on that situation, that's the message you're sending, that there's something wrong with him and he doesn't deserve to be a full-fledged teammate. Again, I'm not calling the other Leaf players cowards who didn't do anything, but I am saying that they're not very good teammates. In fact, they're pitiful teammates, and that's sad. I'm being a little harsh here, aren't
I think you're being fair.
I'm looking at 46 and a half minutes, Aaron.
Cool.
And we're allowed to go the hour. We're going past the regular time, folks, but this is only for convenience because I was so tired and so emotionally drained thinking about the Maple Leafs. I had a nap.
Well, I am glad that you woke up in time
I
to
wouldn't have.
see that.
The
Ah,
phone rang. That's why I woke up. And I
I'm
saw
glad
it
I
said
gave you a
Aaron on
call,
it.
10.
I saw it said Aaron on it, and I'm going, we have a 5 o'clock show. What time is it? Oh, 1 minute to five. Okay. No, maybe it was 2 or 3 minutes to.
Now, there was actually one thing I wanted to touch on, and if we can get through that, there were a
Do it.
couple more that I wanted to touch on. There were rumors coming out of Calgary that a lot of players had asked for trades. As usually happens when this sort of thing goes on, there's speculation as to who's going to be out of there. Turns out this time it was the coach. So after Daryl Sutter was fired, it turns out some of the players who had asked for trades rescinded their request for trades. Now, um, we've mentioned issues like this before, in particular with the Winnipeg Jets going through like three coaches in the space of 4 years. That sort of thing. Being the problem is not necessarily the coach. The problem could potentially be the room. But as you and I both know, it's easier to fire the coach than it is to get rid of the players, especially after you've given them big money contracts for stuff they've done in previous years that they just haven't managed to live up to in Calgary, for example. And I can see something like that happening basically because the player that you brought in and are paying a boatload of money to isn't playing with the same caliber of players on Calgary that he was playing with on, say, oh, I don't know, the Colorado Avalanche. It's just the way that these things sort of work. Um, and just looking at the way that everything's shaken out for them. Um, I don't think Daryl Sutter is anybody's favorite type of coach whatsoever. I just think
Historically,
that,
Aaron, that's what happens with him.
yeah, he loses
That's
the room
that's
very quickly.
historically. He won a Stanley Cup. He won a Stanley Cup, and a year or two later, the players wanted him out. It's coaches do have stale dates, right? They actually do. You know they they end up just because of the passion they have and the attention to detail that players have to have with passionate coaches like that. Once that attention to detail falls, the coach's passion begins to become more desperate, and all of a sudden it's just not working. Either because the plan isn't working anymore because the players aren't dedicated to it, or worse, he doesn't have the players to execute the plan that he wants. He's trying to make players play like he believes they should, not could. And one thing about hockey and about coaching and society, everything is the same. We have to create an environment based on the people within the environment. We can't expect all the time that people are interchangeable. They're individuals, and the individual needs to be put in a position to win when it comes to sports. Not always, in a position to be challenged. Right? Being challenged is awesome, but if you're challenging them to be better at what they are as opposed to what you want them to be, you end up down this road. You end up, it's like we saw with the coach before this one in Toronto. He knew, he was smart enough to know that he didn't have the players to play the game that he wanted them to play, and he said so. And that was an irritation to the guy who got the players and put the players on the team, because he felt, that's a magic formula I've given you. Don't screw it up. Well, like or dislike the previous coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, he was always right. He was right 100%. That doesn't mean he was a nice guy. That doesn't mean he was the kind of guy you want to have leading young men. It just means that he had a point. It's like in the US, to drag it into politics. Here's a sound you might have thought you wouldn't hear from me, but if you know me well enough, you know you will hear it from me. Joe Biden and company are beginning to realize they need to put a wall on the southern border.
Yeah, specifically around Texas.
At the south of Texas, they're having a problem with immigration. The solution is one that someone made that I think is giving him a lot of credit, to switch to politics. And with hockey and with everything else, it's the same thing. To be able to not do something out of spite, to make changes, not fearing it looking like spite, is a great idea. In other words, the idea that Trump came up with is something that appears to be where they're going. The fact that the Democrats aren't paying attention to that simple fact, that there is a problem at the border, gives more rise to support for Trump. In the case of the Maple Leafs, they can blame the coach all they want. They can blame the general manager all they want. But they have to first look at the circumstance and what they need to do. Do they blow this thing up if tonight doesn't go the way they want, and the following game and 2 days later ends the Leafs' chase for the Stanley Cup? Is this a rebuild team? That's the pressure that this team is feeling. That's the pressure this team is feeling. And it might be a little too much unless they can focus it. And if they can focus it, Aaron, they'll be fine. What's the other thing you wanted to touch on?
The one last thing I actually wanted to touch on is a bit of a slightly more serious subject. In specifically, we're talking about the wildfires that are currently ravaging northern Alberta. There are currently 24,000 people that have been turned out of their homes by these increased wildfires. I encourage individuals to look up ways to pay into relief and to contribute to helping them. There have been a bunch of smoke jumpers that have left from Ontario and Quebec that should be landing in Alberta later today for that sort of thing. A lot of First Nations communities have been affected, and unfortunately, a lot of the time, those First Nations communities don't get the support that they deserve. If you can, please take the time, try to find worthy causes that you can contribute to. Use clothing, cash if you can. Uh, also look into the municipal wildfire assistance program. This is for individuals and cities in particular that have been hit with the fact that the UCP have cut wildfire fighting funding. And as a result, they're dealing with a much more serious situation than they normally would be at this particular time of year. So if you can, folks, please keep some Albertans in some of those affected by the fires in northern Alberta in your thoughts, and do what you can to try to help them.
All right, we'll make that the last word. Thanks for doing this, Aaron, and thanks for everything else on the show.
Appreciate that.
This has been Leaf Talk. It's on the Spanglish World Network. See you next time.
See you Monday.